there, deep divers. Ready to dive into something really cool.
Always.
Today we're looking at LLMs, but not just the usual stuff. We're talking about LLMs that can really think, like actually think deeply. And we've got a fantastic research paper from Google DeepMind, all about this concept they call mind evolution.
Yeah, mind evolution, it's pretty revolutionary. Imagine taking the power of evolution, the survival of the fittest, natural selection, and applying it to how LLMs learn and solve problems.
It's wild, isn't it? It's almost like we're breeding super smart LLMs, but instead of genes, we're evolving algorithms.
Exactly.
This paper dives into how mind evolution can handle really complex planning tasks. Think about meticulously crafted trip itineraries or those perfectly scheduled meetings, the kind that take everyone's availability into account. And the crazy part, they're seeing success rates close to 100%.
Almost unheard of, right?
Right. We'll also be unpacking a brand new challenge they introduce. It's called StegPoet, and it involves encoding hidden messages in creative writing. So we're not just talking about logic and planning here.
It really pushes the boundaries of what we thought LLMs could do. But before we get into all that, though, maybe we should take a step back for a second.
Yeah, good idea.
Making LLMs think deeper has always been a major goal in AI research. But it's been surprisingly difficult to achieve.
It makes sense, though, right? It's not just about generating creative text anymore. It's about solving real-world problems that require strategy, logic, multiple steps. All those things we associate with human intelligence.
Exactly.
So much more than just generating text.
Right. And a lot of the earlier approaches, they focused on teaching LLMs to think step by step, like writing out a chain of thought.
Kind of like breaking down a complex problem into smaller chunks.
Yeah, exactly. But those methods have limitations because sometimes you need to look at the entire solution, the big picture, to see if it really works.
So that's where mind evolution comes in. It's not about evaluating each little step. It's about looking at the whole picture and letting the best solutions rise to the top.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You got it.
Cool. So how does it work? Is it like we have a bunch of LLMs and they're all competing to come up with the best solution?
You're on the right track. It's kind of like that.
Huh.
Think of it like this. You have a group of LLMs. Each one has its own approach to solving a problem.
Oh.
And we put them through a sort of competition.
Okay. Like a reality show for algorithms.
Yeah.
LLM Survivor. Who can plan the best trip to Europe?
Haha. Something like that. And the key here is that this whole process happens using natural language.
So they're communicating with each other like we are.
Exactly. And that makes it incredibly flexible and powerful.
All right. I'm hooked. Break it down for us. How does this actually work step by step?
Sure. So first, we start with a set of initial solutions. Think of these as the starting point for our LLM population.
So like we're giving them a basic toolkit to work with?
Yeah, exactly. Then comes the really interesting part. The researchers call it refinement through critical conversation, or RCC for short. Basically, the LLMs start talking to each other. Some LLMs act as critics. They analyze the proposed solutions and offer feedback, while others act as authors. They take that feedback and refine their solutions.
Wait, so hold on. Instead of a human programmer telling the LLM what to do, it's getting feedback from other LLMs.
That's exactly it. And that feedback is crucial. It's what drives the whole evolution process.
So it's like a group project where they're all helping each other improve.
That's a great way to put it.
But do you have a concrete example of how this critical conversation plays out?
Of course.
Yeah.
Let's imagine we're trying to schedule a meeting with a group of busy people. And let's say the initial solution has some conflicts, like maybe it double books someone, or it forgets about travel time between locations.
So like real-life meeting planning problems.
Exactly. And in this scenario, the critic LLM might step in and say something like, hey, this meeting overlaps with John's existing appointment. Or we need to factor in travel time between these locations.
It's like having an incredibly organized personal assistant who never misses a detail. But in this case, the assistant is another LLM.
Exactly. And then the author LLM uses that feedback to revise the schedule, making sure it meets all the requirements.
So these LLMs are like brainstorming and critiquing each other's work?
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And this whole process repeats over and over, over multiple generations, with the LLMs constantly refining their solutions.
So the solutions that best meet the criteria, the ones that solve the problem most effectively, those are the ones that get passed on to the next generation.
Precisely.
It's like survival of the fittest, but for algorithms.
You got it.
But how do they make sure this process doesn't get stuck? How do they ensure that the solutions keep evolving in new and creative directions?
That's where something called the island model comes in. It's a technique for maintaining diversity within the population of solutions. Imagine you have multiple groups of LLMs, each working on the same problem. But they're on different islands.
Yeah.
They develop their own unique approaches on their separate islands. And then, periodically, they share their best ideas with each other.
So it's like cross-pollinating ideas to keep things fresh and innovative.
Exactly.
And they're doing all this while talking to each other in natural language.
Pretty amazing, right?
Yeah, it's mind-blowing. So they're communicating, brainstorming, and evolving all on their own.
It is pretty incredible.
Okay, well, I'm dying to hear how well this actually works in practice. Does it really live up to the hype?
Oh, it absolutely does. In fact, it exceeds expectations in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But maybe we should take a quick break. We can dive into those results when we come back.
Sounds good to me. We'll be back in a moment to explore how successful mind evolution really is. Okay, so we're back and ready to hear about those results. You mentioned that mind evolution really delivers, so tell us, does it actually live up to all the hype?
It really does. In fact, it kind of blows expectations out of the water in a lot of ways.
Really?
Yeah. The researchers tested it on a bunch of benchmarks, those established benchmarks for natural language planning. And the results were impressive, to say the least.
Let's start with the TravelPlanner benchmark. If I remember correctly, that one's all about creating those super detailed trip itineraries based on someone's preferences.
Yeah, exactly. It's like taking all those messy details about a trip. Flight times, hotel bookings, activity schedules, budget constraints, even things like someone's preferred cuisines, and weaving it all together into a perfect travel plan.
So basically, it's like having a super-powered travel agent, one that never gets anything wrong.
Pretty much, yeah.
I'm already sold. Okay, so tell me about the results.
All right, so when they paired mind evolution with a powerful LLM, like Google's Gemini Pro, it achieved almost a 100% success rate.
Wait, 100%? That's insane. How does that even compare to other approaches?
Oh, it's way better, like significantly better. Traditional methods just can't keep up.
What do you mean by traditional methods?
Well, like just generating a ton of solutions and picking the best one. Or, refining a single solution step by step.
Those seem pretty straightforward, though.
They are, but they just don't work as well as mind evolution.
So this isn't just a little bit better, it's a whole different ballgame.
Exactly.
I'm curious, can you give us a specific example? Like, how did mind evolution tackle a really tricky travel planning problem?
Sure. Let's say someone wants to plan a trip to Europe, a 16-day trip across multiple cities. And they've got all these very specific preferences, like they want to spend exactly 5 days in Madrid, they want to see a specific show there, and they only want to take direct flights between cities.
Oh, wow, that sounds complicated even for a human travel agent.
It is, and that's exactly where the other methods tend to fail. They might mess up the number of days in each city, or they might book flights that don't even exist, or they might completely miss important events, like that show in Madrid.
So many things could go wrong.
Yeah, but mind evolution, it nails it every single time. It creates a plan that ticks all the boxes, makes sure the travel between cities is smooth, and even includes that crucial show in Madrid.
It's amazing that it can handle all those constraints.
Yeah, it really is.
So it's not just about finding any solution, it's about finding the best possible solution.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've seen it work for Travel Planner, but what about other planning tasks?
Well, it also does incredibly well on the trip planning task. That's the one for the Natural Plan benchmark.
Remind me what that one focuses on.
It's all about creating those more complex itineraries, the ones with multiple stops and all sorts of challenging flight connections.
Oh, right. So we're talking multi-city trips, layovers, different airlines, time zones, the whole shebang.
Exactly. And mind evolution handles it all like a champ, even when you throw in a ton of cities and constraints.
So it doesn't get overwhelmed by complexity.
Nope. In fact, it seems to thrive on it. Its performance actually gets better as the problems get more complex.
That's so interesting. It's like it learns and adapts as it goes, becoming a more sophisticated planner with each new challenge.
That's a great way to put it.
This is almost too good to be true.
I know, right? But it gets even better.
Even better. How is that possible?
Well, the researchers also tested mind evolution on something completely different.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's called StegPoet.
StegPoet? What in the world is that?
Think about it like this. You're a secret agent, right? And you need to pass a hidden message to your contact. But you can't just blurt it out. You need to be sneaky about it.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So instead of using invisible ink or Morse code, you decide to hide your message in something that seems totally innocent, like a poem or a short story.
So it's like a word puzzle.
Kind of, yeah.
But how does that work with an LLM?
Well, that's the challenge. They have to encode the secret message into the creative writing, using a special word, cipher.
Wow, that sounds incredibly difficult.
It is. And the researchers made it even harder. They added specific constraints, like requiring a certain number of words between each encoded word.
So the LLM can't just cheat and spit out a list of cipher words.
Exactly. They have to be creative and strategic at the same time.
So they're really pushing the limits of what we thought LLMs could do.
They are, and the results are pretty astonishing.
Okay, don't keep me in suspense. How did mind evolution do?
Ready for this? When paired with Gemini Pro, it achieved a success rate of almost 80%.
80%. Seriously, I wouldn't have even thought an LLM could do this at all.
It's a testament to just how powerful and flexible this approach is.
So it's not just about planning trips or writing code.
Right. It's about something much bigger. It's about expanding our whole understanding of what LLMs are capable of.
It's like we're seeing a whole new dimension of intelligence emerge.
I think you're right.
Okay, so we've seen mind evolution excel at these specific tasks. But what about the bigger picture? Where do we go from here?
But that's where things get really interesting. The researchers believe this is just the beginning. They think we can extend mind evolution beyond these specific tasks.
What do you mean?
Well, they're talking about using it for things like scientific discovery or large-scale creative writing, even helping to solve complex social problems.
Hold on, are we talking about LLMs that can help us make scientific breakthroughs, write novels, even tackle things like poverty or climate change?
It might sound like science fiction, but the potential is definitely there. If we can figure out how to guide these LLMs to think in these deeper, more complex ways, who knows what they might be able to achieve?
It's a pretty amazing thought, but let's be realistic for a second. Are there any limitations to this approach?
Of course, there are always limitations with any new technology. One thing to keep in mind is that mind evolution currently relies on programmatically evaluated solutions.
So it needs a way to measure how good a solution is in order to guide the evolutionary process.
Right, and that works great for things like planning a trip, where you have clear criteria for success.
But for more subjective things, like creative writing or art.
Exactly. How do you programmatically determine whether a poem is beautiful or a painting is moving?
Those are things that humans are still better at judging.
For now, at least.
So how do we overcome this limitation?
Well, that's something researchers are actively exploring. One idea is to use what they call LLM-based evaluators.
What does that mean?
It means training other LLMs to judge the quality of solutions, especially for those more subjective tasks.
So instead of relying on rigid, pre-programmed criteria, we could have LLMs acting as art critics or literary reviewers.
Precisely. It's like having an AI panel of experts, giving feedback and guiding the evolution of solutions towards greater creativity and sophistication.
Wow, that's a fascinating idea. So much potential there.
It really is.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
Mind evolution is a truly remarkable concept.
I agree.
It's changing how we think about LLMs and what might be possible in the future.
It's an exciting time to be following this field.
It really is. To our listeners out there, we want to hear from you. What are some problems in your field that you think mind evolution could help solve? Leave us a comment and let us know. Until next time, keep exploring the ever-evolving world of LLMs. So we've talked about these amazing results with trip planning and even secret code poems, but now I'm thinking about those big ideas you mentioned earlier. LLMs helping with scientific discoveries, writing novels, solving global problems. It's pretty mind-blowing.
It really is. We're not just talking about LLMs as tools anymore. This is something totally different. Mind evolution makes me think about LLMs as partners, working with us to solve some of humanity's toughest challenges.
Partners, that's a cool way to think about it. But before we get ahead of ourselves, we have to address that limitation we were talking about. How do we teach an LLM to judge something complex, like a new scientific theory or a piece of art?
That's the big question, isn't it? And to be honest, it's a tough one. But there are some really cool ideas being thrown around. Remember those critic LLMs? The ones that gave feedback during the refinement process? What if we trained them to be specialists?
Specialists in what?
In evaluating those complex domains we're talking about. So instead of just catching scheduling conflicts, they could assess a scientific theory or the emotional impact of a poem.
So instead of just pointing out simple errors, these LLMs would be like expert judges.
Exactly. Imagine an LLM that's been trained to think like a top scientist, a literary critic, or an art historian. Now, we're not quite there yet, but it's definitely a path worth exploring.
Makes sense. But wouldn't those specialist LLMs need a massive amount of information to learn from? Like tons of scientific papers, books, and art history to become experts.
Absolutely. To train these specialist LLMs, we'd need incredibly rich and diverse data sets. Think of it as giving them a crash course in all of human knowledge and creativity.
That brings up another important point. What about bias? If these LLMs learn from the data we give them, won't they also learn all the biases and problems that already exist in that data?
That's a critical issue.
Yeah.
And researchers are really focused on it. Making sure these training data sets are diverse, fair, and free of harmful biases is absolutely crucial. We don't want to create LLMs that just make existing problems worse.
So it's not just about making the technology, it's about making sure we use it responsibly.
Exactly. We have to be careful and think about the impact these powerful technologies could have and make sure they're used for good.
Well, this has been an incredible conversation. Mind evolution really changes how we think about the possibilities of LLMs.
It's amazing what we can do when we combine cutting-edge tech with new ways of thinking.
And to everyone listening, we'd love to hear your ideas. What problems in your field do you think mind evolution could help with? Leave us a comment and let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, keep exploring the amazing world of LLMs.